this is it, friends. We're finishing the best Christmas pageant ever. I'm kind of sad, but I'm super excited for you to hear the rest of the story. And you'll have to forgive me if I get a little choked up. I do every single year I read it. So here we go. Are you ready? Well, we sang, "What child is this?" The wise men were supposed to confer among themselves and then leave by a different door, so everyone would understand that they were going home another way. But the herdmans forgot, or didn't want to, or something, because they didn't confer, and they didn't leave either. They just sat there, and there wasn't anything anyone could do about it. "They're ruining the whole thing," Alice whispered. But they weren't at all. As a matter of fact, it made perfect sense for the wise men to sit down and rest, and I said so. They're supposed to have come a long way. You wouldn't expect them just to show up and hand over the ham and leave. As for ruining the whole thing, it seemed to me that the herdmans had improved the pageant a lot. Just by doing what came naturally, like burping the baby, for instance, or thinking a ham would make a better present than a lot of perfumed oil. Usually by the time we got to Silent Night, which was always the last carol, I was fed up with the whole thing and couldn't wait for it to be over. But I didn't feel that way this time. I almost wished for the pageant to go on with the herdmans in charge to see what else they would do that was different. Maybe the wise men would tell Mary about their problem with Herod, and she would tell them to go back and lie their heads off. Or Joseph might go with them and get rid of Herod once and for all. Or Joseph and Mary might ask the wise men to take the Christ child with them, figuring that no one would think to look there. I was so busy planning new ways to save the baby Jesus that I missed the beginning of Silent Night. But it was all right because everyone sang Silent Night, including the audience. We sang all the verses too, and when we got to Son of God, Love's Pure Light, I happened to look at Emma Jean, and I almost dropped my hymn book on a baby angel. Everyone had been waiting all this time for the herdmans to do something absolutely unexpected. And sure enough, that was what happened. Emma Jean Herdman was crying. In the candlelight, her face was all shiny with tears, and she didn't even bother to wipe them away. She just sat there, awful old Emma Jean in her crookedy veil, crying and crying and crying. Well, it was the best Christmas pageant ever. Everybody said so, but nobody seemed to know why. When it was over, people stood around the lobby of the church talking about what was different this year. There was something special, everyone said. They couldn't put their finger on what. Mrs. Wendelkin said, "Well, Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a black eye. That was something special, but only what you might expect," she added. She meant that it was the most natural thing in the world for a herdman to have a black eye. But actually, nobody hit Emma Jean, and she didn't hit anyone else. Her eye wasn't really black either, just all puffy and swollen. She had walked into the corner of the choir robe cabinet in kind of a daze, as if she had just caught on to the idea of God and the whole wonder of Christmas. And this was the funny thing about it all. For years, I thought about the wonder of Christmas and the mystery of Jesus' birth and never really understood it. But now, because of the herdmans, it didn't seem so mysterious after all. When Emma Jean had asked me what the pageant was about, I told her it was about Jesus, but that was just part of it. It was about a new baby and his mother and father who were in a lot of trouble. No money, no place to go, no doctor, nobody they knew. And then, arriving from the East, like my uncle from New Jersey, some rich friends. But Emma Jean, I guess, didn't see it that way. Christmas just came over her all at once like a case of chills and fever, and so she was crying and walking into the furniture. Afterward, there were candy canes for little tiny testaments for everyone, and a poinsettia plant for my mother from the whole Sunday school. We put the costumes away and folded the collapsible manger, and just before we left, my father snuffed out the last of the tall white candles. "I guess that's everything," he said as we stood in the back of the church. "All over now. It was quite a pageant." Then he looked at my mother. "What's that you've got?" "It's the ham," she said. "They wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't take any of the candy either, or any of the little Bibles. But Emma Jean did ask me for a set of the Bible story pictures, and she took out the Mary picture and said it was exactly right, whatever that means." I think it meant that no matter how she herself was, Emma Jean liked the idea of Mary in that picture, all pink and white and pure looking, as if she never washed the dishes or cooked supper or did anything at all except have Jesus on Christmas Eve. But as far as I'm concerned, Mary is always going to look a lot like Emma Jean Herdman, sort of nervous and bewildered, but ready to clobber anyone who'd lay a hand on her baby. And the wise men are always going to be Leroy and his brothers bearing ham. When we came out of the church that night, it was cold and clear, with crunchy snow underfoot and bright, bright stars overhead. And I thought about the angel of the Lord, Gladys, with her skinny legs and her dirty sneakers sticking out from under her robe, yelling at all of us everywhere. "Hey, unto you a child is born." Thank you, friends. I'm so glad that you spent this time with me to enjoy one of my very favorite books at Christmas time. I hope that you'll listen every year and that it will become a Christmas tradition for you and your family too. Merry Christmas and have a very happy New Year. Bye, friends.